Tell us a little bit about that shirt.
This shirt is available from the Reluctant Apostate Teespring store for, actually it's not that cheap.
How much it costs?
I don't know. It's one way that you can support the channel, the Lloyd Evans channel.
I'll pick one up.
You buy it,
different colors?
and you
They got
get
different
a
colors?
t-shirt. Sorry.
They have different colors?
Yeah, different colour options.
Alright.
And it's basically combining my love of Star Wars with my... It's interesting, if you try and design a t-shirt that is too Star Warsy, they literally don't let you publish it on the site. Their algorithms are really tuned in to not going against their trademarks.
So someone looked at that and goes, alright, that's not Star Wars enough?
I use the font, but because it doesn't say Star or War, well actually it says Wars,
yeah.
but because it doesn't say Star, they got through. So.
Okay. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So but it says Wars though, they don't got a problem with that?
Nah, man, as long as it doesn't say Star.
Yeah, Star Wars is the...
I feel like Wars is way more local than fucking Stars, man.
No, because there's different stars, like Star Trek, Stargate.
See, he knows his stuff.
Yeah. Battlestar
He should
Galactica.
speak more.
Both y'all geeks.
So far, he's making no sense.
Sorry for not being a fucking nerd, right? Sorry for not being a virgin, right?
I'm not a virgin. I've seen plenty of ladies.
How did I sign up to this? I need to find my
Hey, too late now. Too late. If you walk out, I'm gonna take the camera myself and I'm gonna chase you into the rest of the interview, right?
Okay.
Alright. But on the serious level, explain to us a little bit about yourself, just a little small biography. You know, there's so much to say. Just give us a brief summary.
A long time ago,
In a galaxy far, far away.
in Manchester, a baby was born. That baby was me.
Hey.
I need to speed up a little bit. So I was born into a Jehovah's Witness family, and well, how can I put this? I had doubts from the age of 19, 20 that it might not be true, because I started to find that there were things that I couldn't agree with or that didn't really make sense.
First doubt.
The Daniel's prophecy book had some prophecies about the immense image.
The one at the book studies?
The one that we studied at the book studies, yeah.
Oh, that was
Explain
rough.
that.
Man, I couldn't pay attention in the book studies.
I know you probably wouldn't pay
That was
attention.
the book studies was hard. That was the least, like, to me, the hardest one was the book studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In our family, we used to have the book studies at our house, and we had a massive...
Were you still late?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a massive marble coffee table, and the children would all be around the coffee table with their highlighter pens, just defacing the literature while all of the adults were speaking, doing actual studies.
Are you trying to blame it on other kids, or was that you drawing Star Wars figures and
No. I actually took the whole thing very, very seriously. But when I was 19 or 20, it started to just slightly unravel. But then when I was 21, my mother died. And of course, when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you get told, hey, this person who's died hasn't really died. They're alive in Jehovah's memory. And if you follow the religion, you're going to see them again.
And that's what brings a lot of people in right there.
So it was like, okay, well, I need to put all of these doubts to one side and just focus on being the best Jehovah's Witness I can be, because it has to be true. Because if it's not true, I'm not going to see my mother again. So I really threw myself into it. And
Something tells me that you weren't the best Jehovah's Witness, though. Were you? Yeah?
why are you impugning my reputation?
Hey, here's your moment of defense.
I don't think I think it's impossible to be an absolutely perfect Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of rules, man.
I think if even Tony Morris can get caught at Bottle King on a Sunday morning, stashing up on McAllen.
Shots have been taken. So for the normal people,
Yeah, the normies, the non-cult.
So for the normal people, Anthony Morris is part of the governing body. The governing body is like basically saying, like, instead of having just one person that handles everything, like the Pope.
8 popes.
Yeah,
popes.
basically.
Yeah.
Boom, perfect.
And if even he can, shall we say, operate on the periphery of the rules.
Get caught in a liquor store buying a bunch of Jameson bottles.
McAllen?
No.
Oh,
He's
got
bougie
good taste.
with it.
Yeah,
He got good taste.
I don't even know what McAllen is. That sounds fancy.
I stopped at the McAllen section on the way here to America, and everything's like $100 over. you know, for a bottle.
Oh, fuck that. For us normal people, yeah, you know, we take Jameson.
Yeah, you know, maybe that's just the thing with like the religion, you know, it's like, because what's his name, Rutherford or Rutherford.
Oh, he loved his drink.
Yeah, yo, because he kind of scammed everyone too and got got him to buy him that house in San Diego.
Yeah, that's so.
So that's just like once you get to a certain level, they're like, all right, man, it's time to start using that money for the good stuff.
But to circle back to your point, I don't think there is such thing as a perfect Jehovah's Witness, but I certainly did my very best, to the point where, I'll give you an example, college, my parents allowed me to go to college for 2 years on the proviso that I get a qualification that would allow me to pioneer. So the whole point was to get the best possible part-time job so that I could pioneer, and I'll go to college to get it for 2 years. And there was this time in college where I got bundled into a closet with a girl who fancied me.
Oh, your wife might be watching this, you know what I'm saying?
She knows the story,
Okay.
and it's in my book. So he's just shown me.
Of course. Is that I'll start from the ending, and then I'll go all the way backwards, like a prequel, like Star Wars. Like Star Wars.
So, anyway, as it says in my book, I got bundled
Your book is 800 pages, man.
If you were truly committed to this show,
It's like an
he's
inside
expecting
book.
you to tune into, you would have read the 800 pages. He doesn't care.
I swear I'm gonna read it. I promise you.
You
I
ain't
promise
gonna
you.
read books.
We're gonna have a second
Watch
interview.
a different show. You're wasting your time with
Yeah, to be fair, I don't read that much, bro. Like,
Listen, I just want to point out that Joel got through high school by watching the movies and never quite reading the books.
the back, I used to read the back part of it, you know, summarize it up.
Cliff notes.
Yeah.
So I get bundled into a closet with a girl who fancies me, and I wasn't like, I didn't fancy her, but I was probably hormonal enough that if it weren't for the religion, I probably would have, you know, indulged her. But what I did was, even though there must have been 5 or 6 people holding themselves against the door because it didn't have a lock, because the whole idea was that they wanted us in the dark together,
It's like 7 minutes
expecting something to happen.
Okay.
And hopefully, because they were right next to the door, if it was sufficiently loud,
Okay.
they knew me. If it was sufficiently loud.
How long did it take you to come out the closet?
I was so into it. I was so into my not that situation. I was so into my beliefs that I somehow managed to get out. I somehow managed to absolutely batter my way out.
The Holy
the door.
Spirit, bro.
And I can only imagine it must have been horrifying for her, you know, because it must have been quite humiliating. But yeah, that's how seriously I took my beliefs. I was like, no, this is exactly the sort of situation they warned me about.
But next girl that offers you to go in the closet, yo, no brainer, right?
I think even then, I was so adamant about my beliefs, I would have had to get out. Yeah.
And now just the quick transition into where you at today. And just the quick transition. how
So
that happened.
I,
And what is that?
long story short, ended up going through MTS, which is like an elite school for guys who want to work their way up the ladder. And this particular class brought people from all over Europe. And one guy was from Croatia. So we decided for our first year reunion that we would go to Croatia for our reunion. And in his congregation there was this beautiful pioneer sister who was exactly the sort of person I should be getting into a relationship, and it happened that I found her quite attractive, and we ended up getting into a relationship, and eventually
Player.
disrespecting his guest.
And
And
that's a good thing in the US.
eventually, for complicated reasons that I won't go into, I ended up moving to Croatia after we got married. And when I moved to Croatia, because of the language barrier and going to the meetings and not being able to understand what was being said, it was just the space I needed to. I'm in a cult, you know. And it took a few months for me.
So you not understanding what they said made you wake up. It's like,
Because it's like a constant flow of indoctrination, isn't it? When you're in that kind of cycle of meeting on well, I don't know what it is for every congregation, but for me it was meeting on a Thursday, meeting on a Sunday, and in between you'd have preaching and studying for the meetings and what have you. When you suddenly can't understand what's being said or what's, I mean, I could study the English watchtowers, but going to those meetings, it's all about reinforcing the groupthink and the indoctrination and everything. And it was literally like I'd been unplugged from all of that.
So what was going through your mind
Yeah.
when you couldn't understand? What was going through your mind?
It was like I don't think I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I suddenly started revisiting all of those doubts that I'd had when I was 19, 20, that I'd pushed to one side due to my mother dying. I was like, what were those doubts again? And I think it was a Sunday I was supposed to go to the meeting. And I can't remember whether I genuinely was ill or whether I just didn't want to go to the meeting and said I was ill. But I was in the house by myself. Everyone had gone to the meeting, and I thought, I'm going to write down on a piece of paper everything I don't agree with. And I started doing it, and I managed to. There were 9 points, but they filled the sheet with how much I was writing down. And I thought, you know what? The very fact that I've been able to do that, to not just think it, but to commit those thoughts into actual writing on a piece of paper, and there are 9 of them, means that I am not a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, because if you were already at that point, it's like to get to that point, there's so many witnesses that I would say most of them, come on, they have something in their mind, and like you said, you went back and you resurfaced the doubts, right? And it's like, there are little things that pop in your head. Maybe you're just sitting in a meeting, maybe you're reading the Bible, go, okay, that don't make sense, but it pops into your head. But to actually go sit down and write it, you're already at that level that you're pretty much on your way out. Because I think like the average person will fight against like saying it in their head and definitely not writing it down.
So that was a pivotal moment, really, and from that point, it was a case of, okay, how do I extricate myself from this situation that I'm in? And first of all, it was going inactive, and that caused huge problems with the family. I can remember it being an emotional thing for me, and I had elders come round, and we sat at a table, and at one point, all of us were crying. So the 2 elders and me were all crying, but the way I kind of pitched it to them was to say, because I wrote a letter to the elders explaining that I wouldn't be going to the meetings anymore and I wouldn't be doing the preaching anymore. And when I read that letter back later, it was like, this is basically a disassociation letter. What I'm doing here is effectively renouncing my beliefs as a Jehovah's Witness. But because at that particular time, the congregation I was in was very liberal, and not so quick to take action. And these 2 elders came round, and I basically pitched them and said, you know what, if anyone comes, I'm going to show them hospitality, and I'll come to the memorial each year. I think because I said that, especially about the memorial, it's like, okay, we're going to keep him, we're going to not disassociate him.
So when you were crying, was like little boogers coming out, or like was it just like tears coming down?
Where is my agent?
Sheila.
I remember when you were ready to leave. Was it scary knowing that?
Can you conduct the interview at this point? I hereby nominate you as the interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Can we orient the chairs? Go on, ask me the question.
All right. So when you were ready to disassociate, were you scared of losing that that foundation? Because I remember Draw was telling me that if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you go to Japan, you could essentially find another Jehovah's Witness family to take you in. Or if you go anywhere in the world, right? As long as you're Jehovah and still within the culture, you'll always have a home. When you were ready to disassociate, were you worried like I'm losing my home and I'm losing my faith that I'll see my mom again?
I had what I think now was probably a nervous breakdown. I didn't get diagnosed or anything. I didn't go to the doctors or anything. But I can remember disappearing into the bedroom for like a couple of days, and just doing nothing but breathing, and drinking a lot. And because it wasn't just about the shunning and disassociation. It was, I'm married to this woman that I love, and we might have to get divorced. And if we stay together, given the fact that she's currently a Jehovah's Witness, what would happen to our children if we have any? Because I'm sure as hell not raising them in a cult, but she's going to want to, and that will be hell.
Yeah.
So there were no easy answers, and it was a very, very traumatic period. Yeah.
And when were you finally able to pull the plug?
Thank you for taking over, by the way. When was I able to pull the plug?
Yeah.
So I drifted into sort of activism around, I'm going to say 2010, 2011, and I started working under the pseudonym John Cedars and writing blog articles and making like undercover videos where someone else was narrating my script.
Where did John Cedars come from?
A bit complicated. There was a forum post that I sort of was influential in it going up onto the forum, and when I saw people interacting on it, I wanted to get involved. And because the forum post was about a historical Jehovah's Witness convention at Cedar Point, Ohio, I chose the name Cedars.
All right.
And I had to choose a generic name to go.
Okay.
So that's where John Cedars came from, and so I started doing the activism undercover, and then we found out that Deanna was expecting around about 2013.
And this is the Croatian wife?
My wife, yeah.
Okay.
Found out that a baby was on the way, and up to that point, Deanna had been happy for us to just fade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not going to kick up a fuss. We're just going to, because she was like a year behind me in waking up.
Okay.
And her whole thing was, so we're going to gradually kind of drift out of the religion, but try to maintain as many ties as possible. But then when we were expecting Jessica, it completely changed the dynamic, because what we didn't want was for Jessica to be indoctrinated into the religion. And if we didn't separate ourselves completely from it, our JW family would have taken it upon themselves to say, okay, Lloyd and Deanna aren't teaching their child what they should be teaching them, we're going to do it for them, you know. So we wanted to draw a line in the sand and say, no, the religion stops here in our family.
And did you waking up start making your wife wake up essentially, or was there sort of like friction between you two when you first started?
I wouldn't call it friction. I was, again, it was a very traumatic period, and the conversations I needed to have with Deanna was so emotionally difficult for me that I actually couldn't have them verbally. I actually wrote her some letters.
Oh.
So I literally was like, I'm putting this in a letter because it's difficult to say to your face.
Okay.
So I wrote maybe 2 or 3 letters, and yeah, to begin with, I think to Deanna's credit, she was tempted to think that this might be some kind of ruse where I was just coming up with an excuse to get out of the relationship. So she was fearful that it was about her and not about the religion. And once she realised that it really was about the religion and not about her, that put her at ease. And then it was a case of, okay, well, I can see that you're very, very sincere about this. This is not some kind of ruse. Tell me your reasons. Let me see if I can find some common ground where you're coming from. And each and every point, I even showed her my list of the 9 things that I'd written down.
The original one from when you
The original one. Actually, I think I showed her that pretty much when I wrote it. And she looked at it and she said, I can't disagree with a single thing you've written down there.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a
Can you
question?
explain to Joel that I will allow him to, if he promises to behave
I'll behave myself.
and sticks to his contractual
No.
obligations.
We got to come to a negotiation. I'll behave myself for 15 minutes. That's all you get. All right, 15 minutes. No, all right. So now you woke up. You got yourself out of there. You were fortunate enough to be able to get your wife out, and obviously the kids, aren't gonna rebel against that, right? So you, for like most people that are witnesses, they go mission accomplished. My job is done, right? What keeps you going? What made you continue after you already got the closest people to you, because you know what else is there to do?
I think I've always been a little bit of a writer, someone who enjoys trying to convert into words complicated things. Even going back into my school days, the assignments I always most enjoyed were involved writing. So writing's always been important to me, and when I was first involved in as an activist, it was really very cathartic to be engaged in forums and writing blog articles. And when I could see people responding to it, and they were giving me feedback that was essentially saying, "Hey, you know, what you've said is really, really powerful," or you know, they wouldn't say that necessarily, but they would make me feel like I was contributing something to the movement. And I think there's a little bit of an overlap where for the first 2 or 3 years, I was doing it for me. I was doing it because I needed to...
like anger or something? Like...
I needed to slay this dragon. I needed to show this thing that had lied to me. And I was retaliating almost by showing that it was a hoax for maybe the first 2 or 3 years. But I think what then happens is... there's an overlap where you realise that it's not just about helping you. You're establishing a platform and an audience where you're actually able to help others, and so there came an overlap where it was minimally about my own catharsis and mostly about helping other people. And the more it went on, and the more the audience and the platform has grown, the more it's become a job.
Okay.
So it used to be that I was a part-time activist, and when my book was published beginning in 2017, that was the tipping point where I could, okay, this is not my job, this is my full-time job.
So you feel like it's more of a responsibility?
It's, yeah, and I was explaining this, we're at the Faithless Forum at the moment, and I was explaining this on stage recently, that, or just before that, with my YouTube channel, at the moment, there's 3 videos going up every 2 days now. Usually it will be 1 video per day, but at the moment it's 3 because there's so much stuff that we're having to work through.
Now you're talking about the YouTube channel that got 100,000 subscribers. You know, I'm gonna flex for you a little bit. You know, the John Cedars channel.
You're slowly building yourself back up into my.
So I gotta suck up to do that. Right.
That's how it works.
So,
That's how it works.
So
yeah, the channel, we're putting out a lot of content, and we could put out a fraction of this content, and it wouldn't make a massive difference in terms of ad revenue from YouTube. And I like to think that I would still have a lot of patrons supporting me, and I would be doing a lot less work. But what really motivates me at the moment is the fact that there's this torrent of really toxic, potent propaganda that's coming out of the organisation in terms of videos, and I hate the idea of a single bad argument leaking out that doesn't go answered. So I feel like it's almost like whack-a-mole. I've got to get each argument as it comes out.
Oh, I've seen some of those videos. They have some really crazy like indoctrination videos for little kids with the animation where they talk about the gay, what is it, like the kid who comes home and it's like, oh, why do they have the 2 mommies? And
you didn't have those videos growing up, Captain?
No, I mean they pretty much just told us it was a bad thing, but it's like, yeah, they didn't make like,
yo, just say my bad on Sunday.
Yeah, my bad on Sunday. Yeah, pretty much.
There's actually too much. There's too much propaganda coming. I'm having to ignore certain things. I mean, when I say I have to get on top of every argument, I can't watch the circuit assemblies. You know they have the 2 circuit assemblies each year and the regional convention. I'm having to leave the circuit assemblies and focus just on the regional convention.
Can you point the circuit assemblies for the non?
So, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you go to your Kingdom Hall twice a week.
Alright, so that's like the church.
Yeah, and then twice a year, the congregations are each arranged into a circuit. Think of like a diocese.
Alright.
And I don't know whether that's what you call it, but the diocese meets together for a circuit assembly twice a year. And then the dioceses are arranged into like a larger cluster of congregations that used to be called a district. I think it might still be called a district. and they meet for a regional convention. So I'm ignoring the smaller
ones.
mass gathering
Okay.
and going for the really big one.
Because the big one's pretty much a consensus of all the little ones.
The big one's the one that they most want people to listen to.
So a bunch of small churches get together, you know, once or twice a year, and as a circuit, and then like a bunch of all the churches get together once a year, and so he attacks the once a year.
Yeah, it's easier to do that than it is to try to counter.
The big
every
one is
rule.
the iPhone, the new iPhone release, and the little ones are the iOS updates.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
basically. Yeah, thank you.
There you go. Yeah,
Look at that.
He should be more involved in these.
He is. He's
conversations.
behind the camera.
But he's
Don't.
But come on, I gotta be in front of the camera.
He's aesthetically pleasing enough to be in front of the
Don't say my name on this podcast.
I will not say that your name
So
starts with a
Morpheus
J
should be
and then
more
the second
involved.
letter is an A and then the